this in the chat. Let's see, sorry. You can pop this in the chat. Do you feel like you're surviving or thriving when it comes to your time? And Terry, if you'll be willing to share what you see.
Surviving. Let's see what else. Surviving as far as time goes.
Yeah. That's how it is for most people. And if you look
treading
around,
water, boy, that's a good
treading
one.
water.
In the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can feel like that. And we can end up feeling powerless and kind of resigned to the fact that it can be any different. Because if we look around, everyone's struggling with the same thing. And so it's easy to feel like we don't have any power. Today, our time together, we're going to talk a little bit about the myths and the truth about time. I want to show you where you have power and influence with your time, because while there are many, many things that you probably feel like you can't control, there are absolutely places that you do have control, and I want to remind you of those. And then we'll give you some opportunity to really put this into action. And if you have a pen and paper handy, that would be great. I will invite you to reflect and write a few things down. So first and foremost, I want you to consider that it's not a time management problem, it's a thinking problem. And that's kind of the good news, bad news. There's an overabundance of time strategies out there, which are great, and I love time strategies. However, if we apply time strategies on top of a faulty foundation and a thinking foundation that isn't in alignment with what we want, we create some progress, but we ultimately fall back. So this is the pattern. You know, if you think about our thoughts over and over and over again, create these feelings, which drive our actions and behaviors, which lead to our results. And for most people, if you don't like the results that you're getting, you go back one layer to alter your actions. And while you get a little bit of headway, people often report that they fall back. You can see it in, you know, exercise and dieting or time management. You can see it all over. And what I'm encouraging you to do is go all the way back to the thinking and your thoughts around time to really examine and just identify what that foundation is, because that's really driving everything, even though it can sometimes feel like a blind spot. Anybody relate to the picture? I know I've been there.
That is so accurate.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to take inventory for a minute, and I want you to just think about, what is the story that you tell yourself about time? And so when I say story, I mean that inner narrative that you may be speaking it out loud to people, but what's the inner dialogue? You know, I know for myself, it was things like, I'll never have enough. I don't have enough time. There's too many things to do. I've got too much on my plate. Think about, what is the running record of around time for you, and just jot down a couple notes.
You can also put it in the chat and then I'll share it too.
And then as you capture that, think about how those repetitive thoughts make you feel. And jot down a couple notes. And Terry, I'll have you kind of share at the end. Then how do those feelings inform or drive your actions that you're taking? That might be feelings of like, I always felt like I was hurrying through things. There was always a level of urgency. So I was doing things fast, maybe multitasking. And then what kind of results does that create for you? And that may be feelings and results. Okay, Terry, I'll let you chime in if there's some dialogue in the chat. And if you haven't put anything in the chat, maybe put some of your thoughts around this. I'd love to just get a sense of what's in the room and what you guys are feeling.
Yeah, and I want to point out one little interesting thing, that when you think about thoughts, what you put in that first bullet is what's the story you're telling yourself about time. And I think that distinction is really key. Our thoughts become stories that we tell ourselves. So here are some of the things that are being said. I careen back and forth between plenty of time, I'll do that later, and eek, it's due when. Another one, boy, I can't do it all. What do I do? The truly important things go by the wayside because I spend all my time thinking I'm too busy. Wow, that's super insightful. Mine is that other people's needs come first and mine come after that. So I move to the bottom of the list. So that's one of my stories, because a lot of people depend on me as an entrepreneur. Paralyzed, fearful. I don't do things as well as I can, then I get angry at myself. Well, you guys are being super open. I appreciate that. Too many pulls on my time. But I can relate to this. No one respects my time. I feel dismissed, like I never have enough time. Haphazard. My self-care is always a lower priority. Yep, that's the one I'm working on right now. Conflicting priorities due to family care and staying financially afloat. I obsess over everything that needs to be done. So I do a little bit over everything and I get nothing done. Boy, I've seen that happen. So yeah, some really great introspection here. I think they really, what I love about this is I feel that they really got that story piece versus thinking about just the thought. Carla, that's super insightful. And I think everybody was very vulnerable in sharing today.
Totally agree. Thank you so much. And really, you guys sharing and interacting is what makes this conversation come alive. And it really is the story, you know, our thoughts over time do become a story and often become what feels like truth, you know, because we've repeated it so many times and we see it around us. And so it ends up just feeling like truth. And that's when you start to feel powerless. And so I invite you, as we continue to really examine that more and more and more, and really see how that is impacting and what would be possible as we start to shift that. I also want you to consider that you have a relationship with time today. And so it can be really interesting to actually write a letter to time. We're not going to do that today, but there's a relationship there. And I encourage you to kind of look at what that relationship is and think about how you could shift that relationship to actually work with you and your goals and all the things you're up to in your life. So this is what I call a survival model, and it's a tool I use inside of my private coaching, which we all tend to have when it comes to just life, but this is really specific to time. And so given what you just wrote down, you've kind of laid out a little bit of your time survival model. And it's made up of your thinking, which is driving your actions, which creates your results. And the crazy thing about it is it can be like a blind spot and really wreaking havoc in the background when you don't know that it's there. And we continue to kind of do the same things over and over again, expecting a new and different result. And this model literally guarantees that you're almost going to continue to get the same results. And so where you have power is really in going back and shifting things over here, which we're going to talk more about. And that's really about, you know, thinking different. That's where you have power. That's where I want to show you where you have control to really influence this. But first, we have to look at some of the thinking myths. And I will tell you that these I have seen again and again in my own life and in working with clients. And so the first one is get more done and then you're going to feel better. And it's a lie. It's a lie that I have to challenge all the time in my head because it's not true. I don't feel better when I work every night late, when I don't spend time with my family, when I don't take downtime to rest. It really is a lie. And yours may listen for the language that yours shows up in. But this is a real familiar one. And the truth is, and show by hands, we get more done when we feel good. Yeah, we get more done when we feel good. Myth number 2 is that if we just add the right strategy or the right tool or add the right person on our team, then we're going to get ahead. And again, the truth is, I want you to consider subtracting instead of adding. And this is my very, very favorite place to work with clients, because what I mean by subtracting is subtracting things that often live in those blind spots. So, some of the things that came up in the chat were things like putting everybody else first, or leaving my well-being to the last of the list, or overcommitting or overextending ourselves. There's patterns in our lives that at one time really helped us to survive and probably got you to the level of success you are at today. But those behaviors are often outdated and actually a barrier to what you're wanting to experience, feel, do in your life today. So again, these can be blind spots. But I mean, even in the dialogue, you started to see some of those come up. Did you see any others, Terry?
I didn't see any others, but what I am seeing is a connection between the stories. So the reality is there's not enough time, or if I just change the strategy. Do you see, Carla, that people cycle through those, if I do this, then I'll get this, if I do this, then I'll get this, as opposed to just taking that step back and really re-examining the story?
100%, especially when we're high achieving, right? Because we think to solve something, we just do more, or we are always adding things or switching things out and not really looking to the behavior patterns that are actually the true barrier. And the reason is because they're often emotionally rooted. And so I know for myself, like my identity got built on working hard and achieving and doing things for others and pleasing others. And so I had to break a lot of those beliefs inside of myself to interrupt those cycles, where I could learn to say no with love. And I could learn to really see that all this energy that I would put to taking care of others, they didn't really want me taking care of them. And I was trying to manage things that nobody wants me trying to manage in their life. So there's all these kind of pockets and places in our lives where we're doing things that aren't necessary. And it's my favorite because you can harness enormous amounts of time and energy here. So I encourage you to keep looking there. Okay, myth number 3, and this is kind of where you were going, Terry, is get ahead and then you're going to have time for what matters. And this one is, it's so believable. It has a hope element in it. And so it keeps us working so hard, but also keeps us hopeful that someday it's going to be different. And I had a client that I was working with a number of years ago, and she came to coaching and she said, Carla, just help me get to retirement. I have 2 years. I just want to retire and then I'm going to live my life. And I told her, I said, I'm not okay with that. And here's why. Because if you get to retirement and then you want to live your life, you actually won't know how to really live your life, because you'll just repeat these same behaviors. Even then in retirement, you'll have a lot more space and time, but you'll still have those behavior cycles that prevent you from greater fulfillment, greater joy, greater well-being. And so we work together to really pull back and eliminate those behaviors so that she could set her team up for her to actually leave, so that she could start to have a relationship with her elderly mom, her teenage son, so she could start to make time for those things. And so, she did. But it's really the thinking that just locks you into thinking there's no other way than just waiting till retirement. So the truth is, someday is an illusion. It's such a hopeful illusion. Your life is now. And if you don't know how to interrupt things now and take care of yourself now and make time for your relationships and kind of do the hard work now, you won't know how to do it then. And you're going to miss all this living time, right? Okay. So every day is a fresh start. And the way I like to think about this is in simple steps. It's the changes occur in the little tiny moments of your life. So this doesn't have to be a big swooping change. It's when you show up to the next moment today and you make a slightly different choice that aligns with your bigger goals for your life and your business. And I love this quote. Time truly is there to be your partner in creating the life that you want. So how do we do that? It's about thinking and doing differently. So again, I'm going to invite you to do some writing. And I want you to just think back to the beginning of the year. What did you set out to do? What were you just lit up about creating this year or doing this year, experiencing this year? And write that down. And Terry, we can take these one by one or do them at the end. Do you have a preference?
Let's do them one by one.
Okay. So pop yours in the chat.
While we're waiting for some to go in the chat, so on the personal side or the whole person side, mine was balance. And then for the business side, it was to bring on a couple of key hires. But as I'm thinking about that, I think that was one of those strategies that I thought would get me more time. So now I'm going back and going,
good.
like, hey, that could have been a little game with I'm playing with myself. So that was interesting. This was a great one. Keep opening, stop being a side hustle and fully commit to launch. Woo. Oh, yes. Yes. Wow. Restore my health and energy, build a new business, and also make time for myself. Fun. Yeah.
Fun. I love that. Okay, next one. What if time wants to be your partner in making this happen? Because it does. So I want you to start to think about what's a new story, what is some new thinking that you could invent about time, because this is all invented in our minds that would actually partner with your commitment for this year.
I wonder if we could do one as an example, Carla, so because I think that's a pretty powerful shift in thinking. Could you take one and do it as an example if somebody wanted to volunteer?
Sure.
Any volunteers for that?
Anne?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So tell me what your commitment is.
It was to keep opening, to allow myself to be vulnerable.
Okay. And so give us a little bit more specific, like what might that specifically look like?
Well, it's really in the area of expanding my expertise in speaking and in writing. So showing more of myself, and that's the vulnerability piece, opening up to the stories that, not that I tell myself, that's a whole different thing, But as far as the stories that have taught me what it is that I'm trying to share through my writing or speaking.
Okay. And is there a time component or a time narrative that's getting in the way for you with this?
Well, now that's a good question. I don't know that there is actually.
So is there anything else in the way?
Oh, well, I'm sure. Maybe you go to somebody else while I think about that. Well, let me just tell you, let me, if I may, just share. Oh, I think I'm too late. Never mind.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
That where I struggle with time has to do with not being able to realistically project how long is this project, this task going to take. And so I say, oh, I can do these 3 projects today, and I barely get one done.
Yeah.
Is that more workable?
Is that what?
Workable?
Well, for sure. I think that who else can relate to that problem? I know it's kind of a joke in our house because I always think I can get more done than I can when it comes to my time. But I'd be curious to, is there a narrative that what was your story around time that kind of runs like a record?
That I don't have enough time for self-care.
Yeah.
Or that it's not as important as these other things that I'm trying to do or need to do.
Yeah, and you can see how even just the I don't have enough time, and then if you're track, your goal is to get 3 projects done and you're not getting those done, it's an affirmation, right? It becomes an affirmation to right, to confirm your story. So what have you tried to do differently around that?
One thing that works really well is when I block a amount of time and cluster, like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this phone turned off. So I'll block 3 or 4 hours. And I've started doing this around writing, like 1 day a month is writing. And so I had it all lined out, the different articles and things I wanted to write. And because I had it well organized, when my writing day came last Friday, man, I was on a roll and it was flowing and everything was working.
And that feels so good.
It feels great.
I mean, one strategy I would try is I love to think about one thing I could get done in the day. And if I got that one thing done, I would feel great at the end of the day. Because I think that's a problem, that we get to the end of the day, and especially if you're a high achiever, you have 10 things on your list and you feel defeated every day. And so one thing that's helped me is to really shorten that list, and be successful, be successful at that. Because if I got the one thing done, usually that creates momentum for getting the other things done, and it builds on itself. And so I would encourage you to think about really shortening the list. Not that you will get less, I don't think you'll get less done. I actually think you'll get more done. But I think it starts with shortening a list.
Okay.
And playing with your narrative a little bit. Terry, anything you want to add?
The only thing I would add to that is, and it kind of is a different way to shorten the list. I call it mind to do. And a lot of times we get all these ideas and we think they're actions and we put them on the list, but in reality, they're just ideas. And so by separating the impulse for the idea from the impulse to act on the idea, a lot of times that idea basically can come to you without you having to do anything. So that mind to do, M-I-N-E, mind to do, a lot of times those ideas are the universe kind of prompting me, and it could be that that's going to come to me in another way, and it's not actually something I need to do. And I think we take all of those ideas and those downloads and those thoughts as actions and things we have to do. So what I do now is I just write them down, and then each week I look at that list, and some of them I go, you know what? It's either not time for that or the universe needs to bring me that. And that's how I shorten my list.
I love that. I love that.
Jenny raised her hand. Jenny?
Thanks, Dan.
And
Thank you.
and something about time management for me, I guess it's kind of broad the way I'm saying it, but it's not that I'm incapable of managing my time. It's just that sometimes I just had trouble like deciding which of my priorities come first, because they're both equally important, but sometimes they just come into conflict. And I guess one of the areas is to just reassess which of my priorities should come and which tasks should be done first, so that I can get as much done as I possibly can.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one, it's for me, it really helps to have that overarching umbrella of what you're committed to for the year. So I usually will have maybe 3 to 5 kind of larger goals that on the daily and weekly, I'm always going back to look at, am I in alignment with what I set out to do this year? Or, is there any adjustment that needs to be made? But when you're coming up against like that conflict, like they're both high priority, I would encourage you to lean into your intuition, like feel into your heart and feel where your energy wants to go. That has helped me a lot, because if I follow my energy in that moment, I tend to get more done. I'm more effective, efficient, and which leads to momentum on the next task. So hopefully that's helpful. For sake of time, I want to kind of move through these questions just so you know, and you may have to do some of these on your own. But again, how does it make you feel as you think about a new story? What are you inspired to do differently? And then what are those possible new results? And this is really like a game you get to play. It's like a puzzle. You can move around the pieces and see where it takes you. And I encourage you to just do an experiment. Try today, just shifting some of this and see where it takes you. I know for myself, I used to use words like busy. Like I started just changing my language and the way that I spoke about time. And that had a huge impact. So our thoughts and our words have so much power. And then over time, and this is not a quick fix. I mean, it's still a practice for me. I think it always will be. But over time and with practice, the ship starts to turn and you start to operate in a different state of mind, and your results and feelings start to really shift. And again, this is just kind of an idea of what a new model could look like. And going back to you, Anne, I just wanted to say also look for places where those eliminate outdated roles of responsibilities. Sometimes what's keeping us from getting the things done are we're picking up our phone, or we're doing something for someone else always, or we're not guarding our time. And so that's another great place to look. So you get to invent and play with a new model. And then just in review, I won't read these because you can see them. But one thing we didn't talk a whole lot about is number 4, which is really making sure that your thinking is aligned with what you want to create in your life and what you want to create around your time. And that also involves your language and the way that you speak about it. And then I would encourage you to just write down one thing, and you could put this in the chat, one thing you're going to do out of an insight that you got today. And Terry, if you feel like we have time, we can share some of those. Or I'll turn it back over to you.
I like that. Stop saying I'm busy. I love that. What other insights can you take away as it relates to time? Stop overscheduling.
Love that. I heard somebody say recently that busy people are overscheduled and undercommitted. And that just kind of reinforces that idea to be really clear about your commitments, because I can forget overnight and then kind of just get off on a tangent of something and then not realize that I'm not on track to what I'm committed to. That's been a powerful tool.
I think for me, I have to stop being afraid of time
That's good.
Batching time and changing the time story. That's a great idea. Stop being afraid of time. That's really insightful.
Yeah, I agree.
Take time to reassess what comes first. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. And, I think as I'm seeing some of this, Carla, what I find is we know the answer, right? And it's not about learning a time management strategy. And I think that's what's so insightful about what you're teaching, and also what's so insightful about your course. So for those of you that are ShiftCo members, Carla also has a course in the core. It's really not about a new time management strategy. It's really having a new relationship with time and having a new relationship with the way you think about time. Is that what you're saying, Carla?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And another one is schedule time for what matters most for my well-being. So lots of insights.
Love that. And you know, like the schedule time for well-being, I think that's one thing I've had to learn. It's been really hard because I'm a recovering workaholic. I love to work. I love my work. And so I have to constantly be really diligent about making sure that I carve space, even if it's small, to get up and walk around, go for a walk, take a lunch that's not sitting at my desk. And all what I've learned in forcing myself to do it initially is that when I do that, it gives back to every part of my life. And the more you see that evidence, the more you see that it's not taking away, it's actually giving to every part of your life. It's easier to flex that muscle.
I love that. Carla, do you have a few minutes for just a couple of questions?
Of course.
Anyone have a question? And then while we're getting those queued up, Imran said, just thought I'd share a thought and some experience. I found that with language and with habits, you can't just stop. You need something to replace the old with the new, the language, the how you're basically being productive. That's super helpful. Thank you, Imran.
Love that.
Anyone have a question for Carla to take advantage of her brilliance? Kim?
Yeah, maybe a question, maybe a comment. A comment, but Carla can tell me I'm wrong. I'm feeling, you have total permission. I'm feeling like there's a big relationship between, let's say, time clutter and stuff clutter. And I have noticed, I mean, I was sitting here looking, there's probably 200 pens in pots over here and stacks and stacks of paper. And one thing is I can't get anything done because I'm spending my time digging through the stacks. But also thinking that my inner millionaire does not live like this.
Yeah, so couple things. One is, they say, how you do something is how you do everything, right? And so I think it's interesting that like you're noticing a connection there. And I would encourage you to look at why it makes perfect sense that you, Kim, have clutter. Because there probably is something, and you don't have to share it here today, but there's probably a reason that made sense in your life, or that helped you comfort you, or helped you survive something, or I don't know exactly what, but I would bet that it's kind of outlived its purpose in what you're up to today. And what would it look like to free yourself of that? So that's one side. Does that resonate?
Oh, yeah. I don't know the answer, but wow, I will look for it. Thank you.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Another great question, Carla, is are there any apps you recommend to help maintain focus and productivity? And then, how do you structure your day, week, and meals?
Yeah. So an app, I have not been successful finding an app that has really helped me with that. What has helped me is using timers. And so years ago, I was making dinner for my family and I was making rice, and rice takes like 20 minutes to cook. And I had this project I'd been procrastinating on for like the week, and I needed to get it done. And I thought, I thought I needed like 2 or 4 hours to get the project done. And I thought, I'm just going to sit down for these 20 minutes. And I got the whole thing done in 20 minutes. And from then on, I started using timers, because my mind always thinks I need 2 or 4 or like a whole day to like do something. And it's not true. And I find when I set a timer and just focus on one thing, it's amazing, even in like a 5-minute window or a 10-minute window, what you can get done when you're focused on one thing. So that's been really helpful. And the second question was scheduling. So I like to block time. I like to block time to do things. What doesn't work for me is blocking specific, like I have to do, marketing at this time, or I have to do writing it on Wednesdays at 3. I find that I like to work more with my energy and my intuition on what to do in that time, but I like to have project time blocked off so that I can think and create. So I hope that's helpful. Did I answer the whole question, Terry?
I think so. Nikita, did you have another question to follow on? And then somebody did put a suggestion for an app in there. Yeah,
oh,
she's
nice.
good. Well, Carla, thank you so much. I'm so honored that you're a coach and a master teacher in SHIFCO. And I know the members that have worked with you absolutely love you and your work. And I just want to encourage everybody to check out Carla's course in the core, because this idea, she's got some great exercises in there for you to really get underneath that story. This is just a sampling of the course she has in the core, to really get underneath that story and how you're thinking about time. And rather than trying to change your behavior, you really start with your thoughts. So Carla, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was an honor to spend the time with you. Yes, Kim.
I want to shout out for your podcast.
Ah,
I love it. Differently podcast. And what is the name of the class in the core? I don't think they're by teacher.
Master Your Time.
Yeah, I was going to say, see, I knew it was pretty darn close to this. Carla, I'm going to put the link to your podcast in here if you're okay with that, because your podcast is.
Yeah, of course.
I'll put the link in for everybody to take a listen. I'll put Apple in. We'll put the Apple link in.
And you can always just go to the website too, carlareeves.com/podcast. But Terry, it's such an honor. It's such an honor to support the members. I love this community because we have an opportunity. We're all teachers and we're all students. So
all the time.
I'm learning so much by being part of this community. So excited to see you all in future places.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks again, Carla.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
Bye.
Bye.